NBC New York, this is the news. Reported by Chet Huntley and David Brinkley.
The United States today honored Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin, and Michael Collins. Millions of people cheered the Apollo 11 astronauts in parades in New York and Chicago. Many millions more watched them on television. The astronauts began their day in Houston, flew to New York, then to Chicago, and finally to Los Angeles for a presidential dinner tonight. The New York parade took the astronauts from Wall Street to the United Nations. Although it started a half an hour ahead of the announced time, more than 2 million people were in the streets to cheer the national heroes. At City Hall, Mayor John Lindsay sounded an earthly theme.
Your greatest triumph was to remind us again that nothing is impossible in space or on Earth if we truly choose to do it. And while we watched you travel beyond the Earth, we learned again the wonders that await us here at home, if we choose to make them real, shaping shelter and sustenance for those that lack these basic elements of life, preserving and protecting the precious life within our air and water and across this corner of the universe that is our home, creating at last that peace which man must achieve if this small, fragile home is to survive. And it is in that spirit, the true spirit of Apollo 11, that New York and all of this world honors you today. It's a privilege for me to accept the honor of these medals from the city of New York. But more importantly, it's important to accept the honor of the people themselves, exhibited today in the warm, vibrant reception that we could clearly see was from the hearts of the people of this magnificent city. Thank you very much.
At the United Nations, a short ceremony presided over by Secretary General Font.
It's my pleasure to present to you on this occasion the exact flight duplicate, the twin sister of the plaque that we left on the surface of the moon for all mankind.
discovered on the ride in from the airport that for an instant I thought I was back in space again. I looked up over my head and there were no buildings, no sky, no cues of any sort, just confetti everywhere.
There is no way that I can convey the thanks that I have to you for the most generous and warm welcome you gave all of us today. I have never seen anything like that.
The Huntley Brinkley Report is produced by NBC News and brought to you in color by Alpo, 100% meat dog food. No sugar, not a speck of cereal. With Alpo, you know.
Do you think of your dog as a member of your family? So do the folks at Alpo. Alpo is 100% meat. Because we know your dog needs meat. Alpo beef, horse meat, chicken, Alpo lamb, liver. All are 100% meat. See what happens to your dog when you switch him to Alpo. Power drills. All Black & Decker drills for all drilling jobs. Heavy-duty drills for the big drilling jobs. Hour after hour, day after day. Hole gun drills, the ultimate in pistol grip drills for automotive repair or any professional use. Cordless drills for power where there is no power. Black & Decker drills for every use, in industry and the home. This new reversing variable speed drill has trigger control so precise you can drive a screw or just flip the switch to take them out. What Black & Decker has learned about making drills for over half a century can be yours for as low as $10.99. Men who work with power drills know, for value, performance, and service, you can expect the best from Black & Decker.
The Russians and the Chinese fought a military battle today on the border of China's Xinjiang province. Each says the other started it, but whoever started it, it happened. 30-odd years ago, the Russians almost annexed Xinjiang, and it is said they would still like to have it, and the Chinese seem to think they would. The province includes China's nuclear installations, which perhaps the Russians would like to see destroyed. And it has a population whose origins are more Middle Eastern than Chinese, and so their loyalty to China is not the most profound. There are few details on what today's battle amounted to, but the important thing was that it happened. Chet?
South Vietnamese President Thieu and Premier Hong, who don't get along very well, have resolved their differences. The president is going to keep Hong in office and expand his cabinet. This solution, which became known today as typically Asian, Hong is popular with the people, but not with Thieu's closest political allies. And by expanding his cabinet, the president will get the broader political base the Americans have been urging on him. The intensity of the renewed enemy attack in Vietnam fell off considerably today, but still, there was fighting. David?
Somehow, the public mood in this country has clearly turned against the spending of 2/3 of the government's tax income on the military and its hardware. And now, slowly, Congress is responding to this public pressure. Today, Representative Mayen of Texas, the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, said his committee was going to cut the Pentagon's money this year by $5 billion. That was another side to yesterday's development in the Senate, where the members were asking querulously why the U.S. Navy maintained 15 aircraft carriers when other big countries, including Russia, thought they were obsolete and didn't keep any. Chairman Mayen had a news conference today, rare for him, and said what he thought.
We will cut at least as much as we did last year in my judgment. That's $5 billion, in my opinion, from appropriations as a minimum. I have alerted the Secretary of Defense, Mr. Laird, to the fact that the current fiscal year is running and that he ought to begin cutbacks in lower priority defense programs in anticipation of congressional reductions. I think under the circumstances and in view of the statement of the President with regard to the overall expenditures, it is mandatory that these defense cuts be made. But they must be made in the lower priority items. It is too early to say just what specific programs the Appropriations Committee may clip. There's a feeling that some personnel reductions are in order. Of course, we cannot dismantle our defense establishment. Here we are approaching a time when we hope to sit down with the Soviet Union, and we'll get nowhere unless we can deal from strength, and we cannot appear to be backing away from the necessity of maintaining an adequate defense force. There are such programs, however, as the Cheyenne helicopter, the main battle tank, which has been an inglorious failure so far, which are in technical difficulty. The cost of the C-5A program has risen sharply, and we're having a good look at that. A question is being raised as to whether or not another giant carrier for the Navy is essential during this budget year, as proposed in the budget. There are several new aircraft development programs which have been requested, and in my judgment, the Congress will not grant funds for all of these new aircraft programs.
3 American prisoners released by North Vietnam last week brought back the names of other Americans they found to be in prison and still alive. Some of them were listed as missing because the U.S. military and their families didn't know if they were dead or alive. North Vietnam still refuses to name the prisoners it holds, but the 3 Americans have named about 20 to 25 men they knew were alive, and their families have been informed.
Why do so many of us who have trouble with our backs turn our backs on them? Is it because we can't see them? Every day our backs go through so much bending and lifting and twisting and stretching, not to mention poking and pushing and pounding. With our backs going through so much all day, shouldn't we take care of them at night with a mattress that can give them the best support? The new Back Care Beauty Rest. It's made with separate coils that give under your hips and shoulders, yet firm up under your back. Coils extra firm to give you extra support and comfort. Back Care Beauty Rest by Simmons. Only a mattress with backbone can support yours.
The Huntley Brinkley Report continues, brought to you by Fantastic, the new spray cleaner that wipes out dirt on contact.
What you do with your spare time is your business. Ours is giving you more of it. With today's extra powerful Fantastic from Texsize, it wipes out dirt on contact so completely you spend less time cleaning. That means you have more spare time. More time to do what you like best. And no matter how much time you need. Fantastic, the spare time that comes in a spray cleaner bottle.
The Nixon administration made a move today which is bound not to sit well with the oil industry. Assistant Attorney General McLaren, head of the Antitrust Division, recommended ending import quotas on foreign crude oil, something the industry has fought for years. McLaren called the quotas unfair to consumers and bad for competition. At the summer White House in California, the president sent another major piece of domestic legislation to the Congress. Today, it was his proposal to give the states and cities a share of the federal income to use as they see fit. At a news conference following the announcement, Arthur Burns, the president's chief advisor, explained the significance of the plan.
The president's proposal for revenue sharing is designed to simplify government, to return to the states and localities the power which they once had, not, of course, in full, but to a certain degree, and we hope to an increasing degree. Also, and very fundamentally, revenue sharing is designed to assist states and localities to attend to urgent problems within their own jurisdictions in whatever manner they see fit, without being subjected to federal requirements such as are now imposed by specific categorical grants. A critical point is this, that there will be no restrictions whatsoever on the use of these monies state may use or a locality may use the money for education or dealing with health problems or dealing with sanitation problems or dealing with police matters. The unit of government involved will make its own decision, rely on its own judgment, on its own set of priorities, without any requirement whatsoever on the part of the federal government.
The president also signed into law a bill designed to let the states cut down the costs of Medicaid. They now run to almost $5 billion a year, and some states have had trouble meeting them. David?
An authority as impeccable as Senator Dirksen said the new member of the Supreme Court would be Judge Clement Hainsworth of South Carolina. He's now on the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, whose jurisdiction is Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, and the Carolinas. He is said to believe in a strict and conservative reading of the Constitution. Well, during the campaign last year, Mr. Nixon said that was the kind of Supreme Court he wanted. The White House refused today to say if Hainsworth was the man. The American Bar Association, meeting in Dallas, heard a speech by Whitney Young of the Urban League, and he was not very kind to the lawyers. He said they advised clients on how to avoid the law, homeowners on how to avoid selling their houses to Negroes.
Law and order is often linked to violent crime, but it is not to be, should not be, but if it is to be perverted into an instrument of racial repression, there must be the same concern for the law in other areas. What about the crimes committed against black people? Crimes like discriminatory hiring and promotion. Crimes like housing discrimination and ghetto exploitation. These are the crimes that are tearing our cities apart and injuring millions of black people whose only offense is the color of their skin. And the legal profession is deeply implicated in such crimes. Lawyers advise corporations on how to avoid the law. And lawyers advise homeowners on how to keep neighborhoods lily white. They sit on zoning boards and local housing committees. I think history might well describe you all too often as I hear your sons and daughters describe you in many of the colleges I speak today. As great masters of helping people evade, as great money makers, as great manipulators of the political system, people who've become adroit and skilled, not at fighting for justice, not at being the guardians of the poor, not at being the protectors of the liberties of all little people that the law really started out to be. You've got to change that image. If you don't do it, government will someday do it. If you don't provide this kind of protection of the poor, you are going to suffer, not just as a lawyer, but as a human being.
The FBI put out the new crime figures today, and they're up again. In big cities, crime in 1968 was up 18%. In the suburbs, up 17%. In rural areas, up 11%. In 8 years, crime in this country has risen 122%, while the population grew only 11%. Actually, the figures are far worse even than they appear, because about 70 to 80% of the crimes are never reported, because people tend to believe the police can't or won't do anything. Chet?
There was talk today about drugs and a mad killer, but the Los Angeles police are no closer to a solution of the 7 killings of last weekend than they were then. Sharon Tate's funeral and the funerals of 3 of the 4 people murdered with her were held in 4 different churches. The services for Miss Tate, a remarkably pretty actress who was about to become a mother, were held in West Los Angeles.
This was the first that anyone has seen of Miss Tate's husband, movie director Roman Polanski. He was in Europe at the time of the murder. He was accompanied into the West Los Angeles Catholic Church by the actress's mother. Many of Hollywood's elite turned out for the funeral, despite the fact that it was billed as a private family affair. It was only one of 4 funerals held today for the 5 victims who were murdered at the Polanski's Bel Air estate last Saturday. Services for Abigail Folger, the coffee heiress, were held in San Francisco. Those for hairstylist Jay Sebring and the 18-year-old youth, Stephen Parent, were conducted elsewhere in Los Angeles. The funeral for writer Wojtek Krakowski will be held in New York City this week. Police are still baffled by the crime. The only new development came yesterday when it was revealed that a small amount of narcotics was found in the foreign sports car of Sebring. The car was parked in the driveway of the Polanski home next to Miss Tate's. Miss Tate's funeral didn't draw a large crowd, mainly because the public was not informed where it would be held. The service itself was brief, only 20 minutes long without a mass. Polanski appeared near collapse when he left the church, again accompanied by the dead girl's mother. All of Los Angeles is still shocked at the lurid, bizarre killings. Police officials say they hope to be able to solve the crime quickly, but as yet there are no solid leads. Jim Bennett, NBC News, Los Angeles.
What are you so sad about? I found out I have iron-poor blood.
Well, if iron-poor blood is your problem, don't be sad, be glad for Geritol. Geritol iron enters your bloodstream fast, carrying its high-potency iron throughout your whole body.
Hello. Well, first time I've seen you smile in weeks. I've been taking Geritol.
Check with your doctor. If you have iron-poor blood, don't be sad, be glad for Geritol. It builds high-potency iron in your blood.
Did that pretty dress fit you last week, but not this week? Try new ProSlim 7-Day Reducing to help you lose those extra pounds. You get a diet plan, and instead of fattening between meal nibbling, you enjoy ProSlim high-protein wafers. In clinical tests, doctors report pounds lost in 7 days with ProSlim. Additional menus help maintain weight loss. Eat ProSlim high-protein wafers instead of fattening snacks. Try ProSlim 7-Day Reducing. It really helps you reduce.
The first anniversary of the Soviet-led invasion of Czechoslovakia is only a week away, and today authoritative sources reported that Russian troops are on the move, have been for a week, in Poland, East Germany, and parts of Czechoslovakia itself. The sources said the activity appears to be joint maneuvers of the Russian and Czechoslovak forces planned to coincide with the anniversary. The Battle of Bogside continues. Police of Londonderry, North Ireland, today penetrated into the Catholic slum district and used tear gas for the first time in British history. The North Ireland Parliament was recalled and British troops stood by just outside Londonderry. And late today, the government of Ireland asked Britain to apply at once for a United Nations peacekeeping force for Northern Ireland. David?
The stock market slid down almost 10 points in the Dow Jones Industrials in the middle of the day, but before the closing it slid back up, losing less than 4 points and winding up at 809. But an average share of common stock, even so, gained 1 cent. An investment management firm is offering to sell a selection of securities it calls peace stocks. That is, no stock in any company involved in the military-industrial complex. No company making weapons, bombs, napalm, or any of that. Yesterday, a Paris newspaper said Mrs. Aristotle Onassis was expecting a baby. Today, a spokesman for Onassis said the report was ridiculous, that it was a private matter and none of the press's business. He said the report was ridiculous, but he did not say it was false. In Peterborough, England, the parents of a 2-year-old girl swapped the child with their neighbors for a second-hand phonograph. The welfare officials made them cancel the deal. William Albin Truitt, grandson of the late Vice President Alben Barkley, was found guilty of hijacking an airplane to Cuba last October, and he got 20 years in prison. Chet?
President Nixon gets $40,000 a year to entertain people he thinks should be entertained, but the little dinner he's planned for the astronauts tonight in Los Angeles probably will cost him more than that. There'll be an estimated 1,600 people at the dinner, and it's estimated they'll eat $30 worth each. That comes to $48,000. Fortunately for Mr. Nixon, however, the tab is going to be picked up by the Space Agency, which should leave the president a few dollars for other necessary state dinners. As an additional gesture, Mr. Nixon put his entire wing of government airplanes at the disposal of some of the very, very important people who flew to Los Angeles for the affair.
The 89th Special Missions Air Wing, based at Andrews Air Force Base outside Washington, is in effect the president's own private airline. The wing operates and maintains 25 aircraft, everything from little beach craft up to Air Force One, the presidential jet. The planes are used to carry administration officials all over the nation and the world. Over 1,300 men serve in the 89th, including the finest, most experienced transport pilots in the Air Force. The wing serves as a charter service for the administration. Any cabinet official can use its planes, but must pay the cost out of his department's budgets. Today, the 89th had its busiest day in a long time. At a substantial but undetermined cost, the White House, the Defense Department, and the National Space Agency flew 200 government officials and their wives from Washington to Los Angeles to attend tonight's state dinner honoring the Apollo 11 astronauts. As the day progressed and the passengers were boarded, it became apparent that everybody who is anybody in Washington is not in Washington tonight. They're all in Los Angeles, so many of them that the President has decided to hold a National Security Council meeting there tomorrow. Then the 89th will fly everybody back home to Washington again.
Air Force 2 ground control, taxi runway 01 left.
Air Force 2, clear for takeoff, 01 left, wind calm.
Of all the many conveniences of office, most former presidents find that this effortless, instant transportation for themselves, their friends, and associates is one of the things they miss most when they leave office. And it's easy to understand why.
Good night, David. Good night, Chet. And good night for NBC News.